What if the reason people don't respect you has nothing to do with your talent, your intelligence, or your hard work? What if it's coming from two small behaviors you repeat every single day without even noticing? Let me ask you something even more uncomfortable. Have you ever walked into a room and felt invisible? You spoke and no one really listened. You gave your opinion and it was brushed aside. You worked hard, but someone else got the credit. Here's the truth. Respect is not given because you deserve it. Respect is given because you signal it. And most people are signaling the wrong things. We are taught to believe that if we are kind enough, helpful enough, patient enough, eventually people will recognize our value. But respect doesn't come from being needed. It comes from being grounded. There are two simple methods that instantly change how people see you. Not because you become louder, not because you become aggressive, but because you become clear. The first method is this: stop explaining yourself to people who have not earned an explanation. Think about how often you justify your decisions. You explain why you said no. You explain why you chose something different. You explain your boundaries as if you're on trial. Every time you over-explain, you unconsciously communicate doubt. And doubt is the enemy of respect. Confident people don't rush to defend every choice. They state their position calmly and let silence do the heavy lifting. When someone says, "Why can't you come?" instead of a 5-minute apology filled with excuses, imagine saying, "I can't make it this time." And then you stop talking. That silence feels uncomfortable at first. Your heart beats faster. You want to fill the space. But that silence is power. It tells the other person that your decision stands on its own. Respect begins the moment you stop negotiating your self-worth. This doesn't mean you become cold. It means you become solid. There is a difference between being nice and being respected. Nice seeks approval. Respect commands presence. When you constantly try to make everyone comfortable, you slowly make yourself smaller. And people treat you according to the size you present. But when you speak with clarity, without apology, without unnecessary explanation, you send a powerful message: I trust my judgment. And when you trust your judgment, others begin to trust it too. This is where respect starts, not with force, not with dominance, but with quiet certainty. The second method is even more powerful and far more difficult. Stop reacting. Start responding. Most people lose respect in the smallest moments, not in big failures, not in dramatic arguments, but in tiny emotional reactions they don't control. Someone criticizes you, you immediately defend yourself. Someone ignores you, you instantly feel offended. Someone challenges you, you rush to prove them wrong. Reaction is instinct. Response is leadership. When you react, you give away power. You show that your emotional state can be controlled by someone else's behavior. And the moment people realize they can control your emotions, they unconsciously lower their respect for you. But when you pause, everything changes. There is a small gap between stimulus and response. In that gap lies your strength. Imagine someone says, "I don't think you're ready for this responsibility." Instead of snapping back, instead of explaining your entire resume, you pause. You breathe and you say calmly, "What makes you think that? Tell me how the dynamic shifts." You're no longer defending, you're leading the conversation. Emotionally reactive people feel unstable. And instability does not command respect. Emotional steadiness, however, signals maturity, confidence, and control. Think about the leaders you admire most. When pressure rises, do they panic? When criticized, do they explode? No. They slow down. Slowing down in tense moments feels unnatural at first. Your ego wants to fight. Your pride wants to protect itself. But respect grows when your ego shrinks. The strongest presence in any room is usually the calmest one. When someone tries to provoke you and you remain composed, it creates psychological weight. People sense that you are not easily shaken, and humans instinctively respect what is difficult to move. This doesn't mean you suppress your feelings. It means you manage them. There's power in looking someone in the eye, listening fully, and choosing your words deliberately. There's authority in not raising your voice. There's strength in not needing to win every argument. When you respond instead of react, you communicate something powerful without saying it directly. I am in control of myself. And self-control is one of the highest forms of visible confidence. If you combine these two methods, stop over-explaining and stop over-reacting, you create a presence that feels grounded, steady, and certain. Respect is not about dominance, it's about emotional discipline and clarity. The moment people realize they cannot rush you, shake you, or pressure you into defending yourself unnecessarily, they begin to treat you differently. Not because you demanded respect, but because you embodied it. Now here's where this becomes uncomfortable. Because once you stop over-explaining and once you stop reacting, something strange will happen. Some people won't like it. The same people who were comfortable when you justified everything will suddenly feel distance. The same people who enjoyed pushing your buttons will feel powerless. And they may test you. They may say, "You've changed." They may say, "Why are you being so serious?" They may even try to provoke the old version of you. This is the moment most people break. Because we are wired to belong. We are wired to seek approval. When tension rises, we instinctively want to smooth it over. We want to explain again. We want to laugh it off. We want to prove we're still the same. But growth always disrupts comfort. When you become emotionally steady and clear in your communication, you are no longer predictable, and predictability is comfortable for others. There's a story I once heard about a young manager who struggled with respect from his team. He was talented, intelligent, hardworking. But he constantly overjustified every decision. If someone questioned him, he would explain in circles. If someone challenged him, he would debate for hours. One day, he decided to change one thing. In the next meeting, when someone interrupted him and said, "I don't think that will work," instead of defending immediately, he paused, looked at them calmly, and asked, "What would you suggest?" Silence. The room shifted. He didn't argue. He didn't explain, he redirected the responsibility, and suddenly the energy changed. People leaned in differently. They spoke more carefully. They listened more closely. Respect often begins when you stop fighting for it. When you allow silence to exist, when you allow responsibility to fall back on others, when you are not afraid of a few seconds of tension. Tension is not your enemy. In fact, tension signals strength. It tells people you are comfortable with discomfort. And when you are comfortable with discomfort, you become difficult to intimidate. Most people avoid tension at all costs. They talk too much. They apologize too fast. They laugh when they feel nervous. But leaders understand something different. They understand that silence is not weakness. Calm is not passivity. And brevity is not rudeness. It is clarity. And clarity creates certainty. And certainty creates trust. And trust creates respect. But there's another layer to this, because these two methods are not just about how others see you. They are about how you see yourself. And that changes everything. Let me take this deeper, because the real transformation doesn't happen in the room. It happens inside you. When you stop over-explaining, something subtle shifts in your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who needs permission. You stop seeing yourself as someone who must earn the right to decide. You begin to internalize a new belief: my decisions are valid because I made them. That belief is powerful. Most people don't struggle with confidence and ability. They struggle with confidence and authority over their own lives. They ask silently, is this okay? Am I allowed to choose this? Will they still accept me? And that silent question leaks into their tone, their posture, their energy. But when you answer that question for yourself, when you decide that your boundaries do not require applause, your presence changes before you say a single word. The same is true with emotional control. When you stop reacting, you begin to experience your emotions differently. Instead of being pulled by them, you observe them. You feel the surge of defensiveness, but you don't obey it. You feel the sting of criticism, but you don't let it dictate your response. And in that moment, you realize something profound. You are not your first impulse. You are not your ego. You are not that rush of anger or fear. You are the one who chooses what happens next. That awareness builds internal respect. And internal respect always comes before external respect. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who barely speaks, yet when they do, everyone listens? It's not magic, it's congruence. Their words match their energy. Their energy matches their belief. There is no internal argument happening inside them. They are aligned. When you over-explain, you signal inner conflict. When you overreact, you signal inner instability. But when you are grounded, concise, and emotionally steady, you communicate alignment. Alignment feels safe to others. Humans are constantly scanning for stability. We want to know who is solid, who won't crumble under pressure, who won't shift based on mood. And when you demonstrate that steadiness repeatedly, people begin to anchor to you. But here's the advanced level. You must practice this when it doesn't matter so that you can use it when it does. Practice saying no without justification in small things. Practice pausing before responding in low-stakes conversations. Build the muscle quietly, because when the high-pressure moment arrives, the negotiation, the conflict, the opportunity, you won't be trying to remember what to do. You will simply be who you have trained yourself to become. And that is when respect stops being something you chase and starts being something you carry. Now let's talk about something most people misunderstand about respect. Respect is not about being liked. In fact, the more you chase being liked, the further respect moves away from you. Because when your primary goal is approval, you unconsciously start editing yourself. You soften your opinions, you dilute your boundaries, you say yes when you mean no, you laugh when something bothers you, you agree when you're unsure. And every time you do that, a small part of your authority disappears. People can feel when someone is filtering themselves for acceptance. It creates an invisible instability. If your position changes depending on who you're with, then who are you really? Consistency builds credibility. Credibility builds respect. There's a powerful shift that happens when you decide that clarity is more important than comfort. Imagine you're in discussion and everyone is agreeing just to avoid tension. You see a flaw in the plan. The old version of you might stay silent to keep the peace, but the grounded version speaks calmly and says, I see a potential risk here. No aggression, no drama, just clarity. Now something fascinating happens. Even if people disagree, they register something about you. You are not swayed by the emotional temperature of the room. You are anchored to your perspective. That anchoring is rare. Most people drift toward whatever keeps them socially safe. But leaders, whether in business, relationships, or life, prioritize truth over temporary approval. This doesn't mean you become stubborn. It means you become principled. And principles are predictable. Predictability builds trust. When people know that your yes means yes and your no means no, they stop testing you. But when your answers are flexible based on pressure, they keep pushing. They keep negotiating. They keep probing. Because inconsistency invites challenge. Think about someone you deeply respect. Chances are they don't overshare their reasoning for every move. They don't argue emotionally. And they don't shift their standards depending on who's watching. They are steady. That steadiness creates psychological safety. And paradoxically, when people feel safe around you, they respect you more. Why? Because safety signals strength. It tells others that you are not desperate for validation. You are not easily threatened. You are not performing. You are simply being. And there is immense power in that simplicity. So the question becomes, are you willing to risk being temporarily misunderstood in order to be permanently respected? Because sometimes the price of respect is short-term discomfort. And most people are not willing to pay it. But you are not most people. You're learning to build something deeper, something quieter, something unshakable. Let me show you what happens when you fully embody these two methods over time. At first, people notice small changes. You speak a little less, but with more precision. You pause more often. You don't rush to fill silence. You don't scramble to defend your choices. And slowly, the energy around you begins to reorganize. Interruptions decrease. Challenges become more thoughtful. Conversations become more intentional. Why? Because people adapt to the standards you set. Human beings are incredibly perceptive. We constantly test boundaries, often unconsciously. If someone folds under pressure, we push a little more. If someone over-explains, we ask more questions. If someone reacts emotionally, we provoke again. Not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. We are wired to look for structure. When you provide that structure through calm certainty, people relax into it. They stop testing. They start respecting. There's a powerful dynamic shift that happens when others realize two things about you. First, you will not over-justify yourself. Second, you will not emotionally collapse under pressure. When those two realizations settle in, something changes in how they approach you. Their tone shifts. Their words become more measured. They prepare better before challenging you. You haven't become louder. You've become heavier. Not physically. Energetically, your presence carries weight because it is not easily moved. Think of it like this: a leaf reacts to every gust of wind. A tree bends but stays rooted. People instinctively trust the tree. And here's the deeper truth. When you stop reacting, you gain information. If someone criticizes you and you don't immediately defend, you can actually listen. Sometimes there's something useful in the feedback. Sometimes there isn't. But when you're not busy protecting your ego, you can evaluate clearly. Clarity strengthens decision-making. Better decisions reinforce confidence. Confidence reinforces respect. It becomes a cycle. But here's the advanced layer most people miss. You must separate your identity from the moment. If someone disagrees with you, it is not a rejection of you as a person. If someone challenges your idea, it is not an attack on your worth. When you internalize everything, you react. When you depersonalize, you respond. That mental shift is maturity. And maturity is magnetic. People feel safe around someone who doesn't take everything personally. They feel stable around someone who doesn't need constant reassurance. And over time, they stop seeing you as someone to manage. They start seeing you as someone to follow. Now let's confront the fear that quietly stops most people from practicing this. The fear of losing connection. You might be thinking, if I stop explaining, won't people think I'm rude? If I stop reacting, won't I seem cold? If I don't defend myself, won't they assume I'm weak? That fear is natural. Because for a long time, your identity may have been built around being agreeable, responsive, accommodating. But here's the paradox. Over-accommodation does not create connection. It creates imbalance. When you constantly adjust yourself to maintain harmony, the relationship becomes tilted. One person is steady, the other is stretching, and over time, stretching becomes resentment. Real connection requires two solid individuals, not one strong and one shrinking. When you stop over-explaining, you are not withdrawing warmth, you are withdrawing insecurity. When you stop overreacting, you are not suppressing emotion, you are refining expression. There's a difference. Imagine a close friend challenges your decision. The old pattern might be to defend yourself quickly, maybe even raise your voice slightly, trying to prove your logic. But the grounded version of you listens fully and says, I understand your concern. I still feel this is the right move for me. And notice the difference. There's no hostility, no tension, just clarity. And clarity actually strengthens connection. Because now the relationship is based on honesty, not performance. Weak connections require constant explanation. Strong connections respect boundaries. The people who truly value will adjust. They may need time. They may even test the new dynamic. But eventually, they will recognize the stability in you. And the ones who only felt comfortable when you were smaller, they may drift. That is not loss. That is alignment. Because respect filters your environment. It attracts people who appreciate strength and repels those who depend on your insecurity. This is why growth can feel lonely at first. Not because you are wrong, but because you are no longer participating in dynamics that relied on your self-doubt. And here's something powerful to understand. When you respect yourself enough to speak clearly and respond calmly, you unconsciously give others permission to do the same. Your steadiness elevates the room. Your clarity sharpens conversations. Your emotional control lowers unnecessary drama. And over time, people begin to associate you with stability. Stability becomes influence. Influence becomes leadership. And leadership, whether in your family, your workplace, or your community, begins with one decision. The decision to stop abandoning yourself for temporary comfort. Because the moment you stand firm internally, even quietly, the world starts to feel it. Now let's move into the advanced application, the moments where this truly defines you. It's easy to stay calm when nothing is at stake. It's easy to be clear when no one is challenging you. But real respect is built under pressure. Picture this. You're in a high-stakes conversation, a promotion, a negotiation, a difficult family discussion. Emotions are elevated. Expectations are high, and someone questions your capability directly. You're not ready for this. In that instant, your nervous system fires, your heart rate rises, your ego wants to defend, to list achievements, to prove worth. But instead, you breathe. You slow down your response deliberately, and you say, what specifically makes you believe that? That single sentence does three powerful things. First, it shows you are not intimidated. Second, it shifts the burden of clarity back to the other person. Third, it demonstrates emotional control. Now, the conversation becomes structured instead of emotional. This is the difference between authority and insecurity. Insecurity rushes to prove. Authority invites examination. And here's something deeper. When you stop trying to win the moment, you start winning the long game. Many people destroy respect by trying to dominate conversations. They interrupt. They raise their voice. They speak faster. They overwhelm with words. But dominance without control feels unstable. Calm authority, on the other hand, feels inevitable. Think about the most composed person you've ever met in a crisis. While others panic, they lower their voice. While others rush, they slow down. That contrast alone commands attention. Energy is contagious. If you elevate tension, the room escalates. If you lower tension, the room recalibrates. And the person who recalibrates the room becomes the center of gravity. This is why silence is such a powerful tool. Silence forces reflection. Silence creates psychological space. Silence signals that you are not scrambling. When someone throws criticism at you and you pause before speaking, it subtly communicates, I am considering this. I am not threatened. That pause may only be 3 seconds. But those 3 seconds can redefine how people perceive you. Because most individuals operate on impulse. When you operate on intention, you stand apart. And over time, this intentional presence builds a reputation. Not loud, not flashy, but steady. And in a world full of noise, steadiness feels rare. And rare things are respected. Here's the part most people overlook. Consistency is what makes these methods unstoppable. One calm response or one concise statement can be impressive, but it doesn't create lasting respect. It's the repetition, day after day. Conversation after conversation, that builds a presence people can't ignore. Every time you pause before reacting, every time you state your decision without over-explaining, you are reinforcing a pattern. Your brain and the brains of everyone around you begin to expect it. You are no longer the person who folds under pressure. You are the person who stands steady every single time. And predictability in your stability is magnetic. People start leaning in. They start listening before speaking. They start testing less because testing feels pointless when your responses are measured and unwavering. Think about someone you deeply respect. Their influence isn't rooted in grand gestures or dramatic speeches. It's rooted in the subtle, repeated signals they give. I am grounded. I am deliberate. I am unshakable. Now imagine applying that same consistency in your daily life. In meetings, in family conversations, in social interactions, in challenges, in confrontations. You stop explaining. You pause before responding. You act from intention, not impulse. You communicate with clarity, not anxiety. Over time, this approach creates a silent authority. People recognize it even before they consciously understand it. You become the person who doesn't need to be validated constantly. You become the person others look to when uncertainty arises. You become someone whose words carry weight because your actions consistently reinforce them. There's also an internal transformation happening simultaneously. Each consistent application strengthens your confidence. Each pause strengthens your self-control. Each concise boundary reinforces your self-respect. You stop needing others to validate you because you are already validating yourself. And here's the remarkable truth. Respect follows naturally when your presence signals certainty. When you combine emotional control with clarity of communication, people instinctively adjust, they respond differently, they treat you differently, and they begin to measure their expectations against the standard you set, not the standard they wish to impose. Consistency amplifies the first two methods exponentially. Without it, moments of clarity and calm can be dismissed as luck or coincidence. With it, your presence becomes undeniable, your influence becomes enduring, and respect becomes the natural byproduct of how you exist in the world. In short, it's not just about stopping over explaining or overreacting once. It's about embedding them into your daily life until they define how you move through the world. Because when these behaviors become automatic, you are no longer chasing respect. Respect is chasing you. Now let's bring everything together and see the full picture. You've learned the first method, stop over, explaining. You've learned the second, stop over, reacting. You've seen how these create clarity, calm, and presence. You've understood why consistency transforms these behaviors from fleeting moments into unshakable authority. But the final step is realizing what this actually does in your life. When you combine these methods, you stop being defined by other people's expectations. You stop shrinking to fit their comfort. You stop reacting to their judgments. You step into a version of yourself that is grounded, deliberate, and aligned with your own standards. And alignment is magnetic because humans don't respect noise. They respect structure. They don't respect volatility. They respect reliability. They don't respect someone who constantly negotiates their worth. They respect someone who embodies it without apology. Here's what happens next. People listen before they speak. They weigh their words carefully. They treat your time, your opinion, and your presence with weight. They stop assuming they can move you emotionally or control your decisions. They stop testing. They start following. Not because you demanded it, not because you raised your voice, but because you quietly commanded it. And the internal change is even more profound. You gain clarity about who you are. You gain confidence in your judgment. You gain freedom from approval seeking. You gain control over your own life. And when you embody that freedom, respect is the natural consequence. Think of it as a ripple effect. Your calmness influences your environment. Your clarity influences your relationships. Your steadiness influences your decisions. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to reinforce your presence, your authority, and your value, not through dominance, but through alignment and consistency. And here's the truth most people never realize. Respect isn't something you win once. It's something you build every day through deliberate choices, repeated actions, and unwavering presence. So start small. Practice pausing. Practice saying no without explanation. Practice observing your emotions before reacting. Do it consistently. Do it intentionally. Do it even when it's uncomfortable. Because discomfort is the doorway to presence. Presence is the doorway to authority. Authority is the doorway to respect. When you master this, you no longer need to fight for recognition. You no longer need to prove your value. You carry it in every word, every pause, every decision, and every action. And the world begins to adjust naturally to the weight of who you are. This is not a trick. It is not manipulation. It is not something you can fake. It is a disciplined approach to being yourself fully, clearly, calmly, consistently. And that is the moment when respect stops being something you seek and starts being something you embody.